Marketers, you know that feeling when your content just works? When you crush a viral trend before 10 a.m.? When one tiny tweak to a landing page sends click-through rates through the roof? That's Contentful. Dynamic content made blissfully simple. Contentful helps you create and launch personalized experiences instantly across any digital channel. No stress, no limits, only possibilities. Come get the feels at Contentful.com.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
Hey everyone, welcome to this edition of Spin, Shuffle, Skip on the There Can Only Be One podcast channel and a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. So, if you follow our movie podcast, It's Not That Bad, then you know that on Mondays we put out an episode called Keep Watch Pass. It's basically this show, but for movies instead of music. And just yesterday, we had released an episode about movies starring cool mofos. And one of those movies, my actual keep pick, was a movie called Ski School. And during that episode, I mentioned that two of the songs on the soundtrack for that movie were done by a band called Lock Up, which featured a pre-Rage Against the Machine Tom Morello. So in essence, and in the purpose and in the service of corporate synergy, we being the corporate, synergy being everything aligned, and because my wife is brilliant and came up with the idea to do this, we're actually going to be talking about the Lock Up album, Something Bitchin' This Way Comes. So here to join me for this episode, my totally bitchin' wife, my lovely wife, Carrie. Carrie, how are you doing?
Not your best throw.
No. Remember, this is like the late 80s, early 90s. Bitchin' was cool.
Totally bitchin'.
Totally bitchin'.
Okay.
Notice how we're not actually censoring that because it ain't one of our swear words. Because it's in the title. We can say it. So this is one of those episodes where I also had to put out a disclaimer. There apparently is a super group in England and in the UK of heavy bands called Lock Up. This is not that band. We're talking about a band that released one album and one album only on Geffen Records back in July of 1989. And if you're expecting that Rage Against the Machine sound from Tom Morello, you do get some hints of what was to come. But Carrie, on first listen, before we get into it in our picks, your thoughts on the disc?
I choose to answer that a little bit later because it ties in with my pick.
Okay.
So I will circle back to that.
All right. Well, let me give you the background on this info. It was released July 1989 and was re-released in 1997 on Manifesto Records. The band on this disc is Brian Grillo on vocals, Tom Morello on guitar, Kaznach, Chris Beebe on bass, and Vince Ostertag on drums. The two songs that were released for the soundtrack for Ski School were Punch Drunk and Half Man, Half Beast. And by the way, if you are listening to this on our website, hey, thanks for coming by. But if you're not, go to our website at notthatbadcast.com and make sure you go to the actual episode page. We're going to post the full Spotify link from the album on the episode page so you can listen to it. But if you're listening to us on Spotify, hey, on the app, scroll down because now there's this really cool new feature where you can actually tag certain things on your podcast episodes. So there's a direct link to this album on our Spotify episode page for the show that you're listening to right now. I mean, if you're listening to us on another platform, just go to our website. But if you're listening to us on Spotify, you now have that ability to go check out the album the minute we're done talking about it. Pretty cool. I like it. So, Carrie, we're going to start with you and your keep pick from Lockup's one and only album, Something Bitchin' This Way Comes.
I was really impressed with this album, the entire album. It had this really cool, like, multi-genre of music.
Yeah.
And no two songs were alike, which kind of made the choice, I don't know if it made it easy or actually more challenging, because it's like, oh, I really am digging this song for what it is.
Right.
But then I hear something else and I'm like, oh, no, that's the winner. So,
and then you hear something else like, well, no, that's the winner. It becomes a bit of a process when we're going through these albums. And because we had never actually heard this ever, both of us, this is a first listen.
Literally, I listened to this about 5 hours ago. So it's totally new to me, but I'm not going to lie. I could see myself, giving this album another spin at a later date when it's not for research purposes.
I will be very, very honest. After I was done listening to this, I added all but one song onto my liked songs on Spotify.
And that would be your skip song that didn't make the cut.
More than likely, yes. But because I dug this album. I dug this album a lot. It was really, really cool. But we're stalling long enough here. What's your keep pick?
I'm keeping Can't Stop the Bleeding. And the reason being, and I am now ready to answer your earlier question of what impression I got from this album. And this song is like, I could have sworn I was listening to a Kevin Martin or a Candlebox tune. This song is so freaking cool and just rocky. Like, it's just like, if rocky's a word, it is so, it just has that like vocal bluesy kind of rock feel to it.
Yeah, I was really digging what Brian Grillo was putting down for vocals on this disc. And you do hear a little bit of that Tom Morello future Rage Against the Machine in the guitar solo on this one. I was asking myself as I was listening to this disc, I'm like, okay, cool. How would I describe this album? Because we can't really play the songs on the show, right? Because copyright, we don't want to steal from the band. By the way, listen to the album so they at least get some money out of this. But let me ask you first, because I have some comparables. But if someone were to ask you, cool, who would you compare Lockup to?
Again, Candlebox.
Not the comparables that I was coming up with as I was listening to this. There were 4 bands that came to mind as I was listening to this. Living Colour, for sure, because there's some good funk rock in this. Bootsauce, early Chili Peppers, and there was a band called Infectious Grooves, probably best known for their song that was like Feed the Monkey off of the Encino Man soundtrack. That's the kind of vibes I was getting from a lot of this. But for my keep pick, I went much later in the disc. You picked the lead-off track off the album. I ended up going with one near the end called Where the Sky Meets the Street.
Ooh, that was a good one, too.
It was a really, really good one.
That one stood out, yeah.
Right? This is, and I don't even know how, I mean, obviously, I'm calling it funk rock and whatnot. The bass work on this, Chris Beebe is absolutely killing it. And the funny thing is, like, it was shortly after, I guess, the Lockup broke up that Tom Morello was kind of guided towards Tim Comerford and Zach De La Rocca, who, of course, would then build up Rage Against the Machine. Funny story, the drummer for Rage Against the Machine had actually tried out for and didn't make the audition for Lockup. So you could see kind of where Tom Morello was kind of going with a lot of this, but Chris Beebe's bass work on this has to be absolutely applauded. There's no other way to describe this song. It's stank face funk rock. And if you've listened to the show, I've described what stank face is like. When the groove is so good that your face starts to scrunch up, you're like, that's good. And you can already picture it, and I'm sorry.
It's too bad it's not a video podcast because
no one needs to see my stank face.
That was perfect. It was just perfection.
Perfect in its horribleness, but it's perfect nevertheless.
I wish I had a camera.
Don't do that. No one needs to see my stank face.
I think we should put that as like the icon for the show.
Right? But let's be honest, every musician gets stank face when they're playing like a good, chunky, funky groove. Because, yeah, you do. You get into it. And you all of a sudden you realize, and right now there's guitarists and bassists out there going, oh, crap, I make stank face on stage, don't I? Yes, you do. Yes, you do if you're playing well enough and you're into it enough.
Just own it.
Own the stank face.
How many pictures do I take of you where I'm like, ooh, it looks like he's trying to eat the microphone or ate a bug? I'm not sure which one.
No, if the stank face is really, really good, and I'm sure there are a couple of pictures out there that you've taken of me, it looks like I'm basically holding in a fart or I'm trying to squeeze one out because the funk is that good. Yeah, I put that into your wheelhouse, and now you'll be watching our shows and be like, oh, I'm so sorry. For my shuffle pick, I'm going with one that's not exactly in the funk rock kind of vibe. I'm going with Don't Want to Talk About It. Right in the middle of the disc. This is where I could see someone getting some kind of Candlebox-esque kind of vibes. You know, there's not the funky bass lines here. Obviously, Tom Morello's guitar work is always way above par, but the chord progressions in this, and this is one of those ones where you get to the rally at the end, where things are just building up. It feels like almost like a mid-tempo power rocker kind of thing. The kind of stuff that you could see like 2000s, or later 2000s, early 2010s Harem Scarum pulling off with those mid-tempo songs, or Candlebox in their middle of their career as well. But over to you. What's your shuffle pick off of this?
I went with the song that stood out to me where Tom Morello shone the brightest. And that would be like the one that had the most Rage Against the Machine pre-sound, if you will. I went with Nothing New.
Okay. Now, it's funny because you say where you want like that Rage Against the Machine sound. I would have expected you to pick Punch Drunk because that one actually feels like it would be a Rage Against the Machine song, but Nothing New is great.
That was actually the first song that I heard in the order that I listened to it. I kind of listened to the disc out of sequence. So I started with Punch Drunk. And at first I'm like, damn, this has got to be my pick because it's really good. It was the first song that I heard. And then I heard Nothing New. And I was like, oh, wait, it gets better.
Yeah.
And that was the one that I just circled back to. And I did like, I was really getting a Candlebox vibe from that song, but almost like Rage Against the Machine when they're not the absolute powerhouse, kind of like the B-sides on the album.
Right.
If there are such a thing.
It's funny because there's a guitar tone on Nothing New, and it's almost like this clean picking during the verses. And it's the same kind of clean picking that you hear on Where the Sky Meets the Street. And that's where I kind of get those Living Color, Infectious Grooves kind of vibes. It's a very distinct guitar tone from that era that a lot of bands like that were using. And I freaking love how it sounds, but it stands out from everything else. Like it's not heavy, dirty distortion chunk. It's a clean riff, and it's really kind of cool.
Would you consider it pre-grunge because of the time that it came out?
I don't know if I would call this grunge at all. To the same token as I don't know if I would actually call Candlebox grunge as well, because Candlebox has always felt to me, yeah, they kind of got lumped into the grunge era because, of course, they're from Seattle and they came out around that time and they were signed to Maverick Records. I get it, right? But I always looked at Candlebox as way more blues and soul influence than a lot of grunge. To the same token as well as I don't necessarily put Alice in Chains into the grunge catch-all. I say that because Alice in Chains is way more metal than your Pearl Jams and your Soundgardens and your Nirvanas. To me, Pearl Jam is the sound of grunge, and you could put Stone Temple Pilots in there. Alice in Chains is a metal band.
I agree, but that's why I chose these two songs because of that kind of, it's almost, you're right when you said bluesy, but almost kind of like more like a soul.
Yes.
As opposed to like blues traditional as you would think of it. It's like a rock and soul kind of sound that I was getting from them. But Punch Drunk to me, that's kind of like, and I don't even want to say the grunge era, but kind of that PCU kind of ski school. Obviously, it was used off that soundtrack, but you kind of get that almost like 80s surfer vibe, but not surfer, but like
you
high
get
school.
you get that Vernon Reid, Steve Vai-esque kind of era guitar sound out of all of that. And I just realized I named two of like the most awesome guitar players of that era, and Tom Morello's right in that mix as well. And I mean, just as I don't need to sit here and tell people how good a guitar player Tom Morello is. We all know that is like literally a fact of life. But the thing is, this album, it's funky and it's groovy, and it is like, you think about the time that this came out, and this always happens. I mean, it happened with the grunge scene, it happened with the post grunge scene, it happened with the new metal scene, where a band takes off and then every label looks to try to find their own version of that band. When you think about it, right? Living Colour at this point in time is like killing it with Cult of Personality, right? Which is why I think a band like this kind of gets picked up, because they had that Living Colour kind of vibe. I just wish they had, stayed together longer, but then had they done that, then you don't get Rage Against the Machine. So it's almost like one of those things where this band had to break up, so we got the goodness that was Rage. It's a weird world, but we still have this album and we can still listen to it. And if you like Rage, or if you like Living Colour, or if you like Infectious Grooves, or even if you do like Candlebox as well, like, listen to the album. Discover something, because hell, it's good. All right, Carrie. It's kind of hard to pick, call this a skip song, because the album is pretty darn good all the way through. But you have to play by the rules. What's your skip pick?
No, I'm pretty certain this is a skip song for me.
Okay.
Like, indeed, skip song. And it's going to be a controversial break your heart and break the internet take, because it was the other song from your absolute favorite movie. I am passing or skipping on Half Man, Half Beast.
I can kind of see that.
And let me tell you why.
Okay.
It literally sounded like it should have been the opening jingle to My Pet Monster. It was so like sitcom jingle to me, and it was one of those songs that fade out and you think, okay, it's done. We're done. We're moving on. But no, it builds up again and it comes back strong. And I'm just like, okay, it's we're beating that dead monster, or the half man, like, almost like I could see, if this song was not in Teenage Werewolf, then I don't know. I just don't know.
It's funny because it comes right after Don't Want to Talk About It, which I freaking love that track. And no, not every song is going to live up to whatever it is you consider to be your spin pick. Although I can kind of see, I mean, there was one song on here where I thought about it because it went on and on and on and on and on. I'm just like, maybe this is it. But no, I can kind of see why Half Man, Half Beast was yours. I still didn't mind it, and it still made my liked songs, but it's not my skip pick. At the beginning of the show, I mentioned that I added every song but one off of this. And I'm going with Everywhere I Go, It Looks Like Rain. This is the very bluesy, very slow, very... I don't know how else I can describe this song. This is the song on this album.
I liked that song.
I figured you would.
I thought it was melodic and groovy, and
I don't disagree with that. And I was getting some very serious Leaves from Slave to the System kind of vibe. The last song on that disc, which is a very bluesy, slow, grindy kind of song. And I know you know it. I know you know that song.
So why you gotta skip it?
I skipped this song not because of that dirty, bluesy kind of grind, but there's a two parts in the song, and they do this, right? Where they do like this, like everything stops at boom, boom, boom. And it just goes on too long for me. It feels, it stops the momentum.
That was one of my favorite parts. I'm like, that's so cool because it just gets your attention. It's like, hello, come back now.
I think the other thing too is that it's too, for me, this is a personal opinion, it's too sparse between the stabs. And it's almost like do it once as like a bridge and half it, and then it's solid. But I found it took away from the groove that I wanted to keep going. Like, don't pull away from that. That's an awesome groove. Don't stop that groove. I understand it, but it pulled me out of what I was enjoying from the song.
That's fair.
All right, Carrie, before we go, remind our listeners what your spin, shuffle, and skip picks are from Lockup's one and only release, Something Bitchin' This Way Comes.
Well, I can guarantee I am going to respin this disc again and again. But my spin pick is Can't Stop the Bleeding. My shuffle is Nothing New. And my skip is Half Man, Half Beast.
All right. And for me, my spin pick is Where the Sky Meets the Street. My shuffle is Don't Want to Talk About It. And my skip is Everywhere I Go, It Looks Like Rain, much to my lovely wife's chagrin. Carrie, thank you so much for this. And to you, our dear listeners, until next time, you know the drill. If there's an album out there that you want us to cover on Spin, Shuffle, Skip, or an artist you want us to cover on There Can Only Be One, hit us up on social media at OnlyOneCast or go to our website at notthatbadcast.com. And while you're there, subscribe to the page, because coming soon on It's Not That Bad is our Grading on a Curve special for the worst Netflix movies of all time. The things we do for you, our dear listeners. Until next time, she's Carrie, I'm Jay. You guys are awesome. This is Spin, Shuffle, Skip on the There Can Only Be One podcast channel. Proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Take care.